Snow drums softly against the windshield. On a mountain road erased by winter, a retired Navy SEAL drives into the dark. Not to go anywhere, but to escape the silence waiting at home. Beside him, a canine named Atlas suddenly refuses to move. Ahead, hidden beneath falling snow, a car sits dying. Inside it, a woman waits where prayers go when words run out. Her breath is fading, and on her lips, one name slips free.
Is anyone there?
A name the war was supposed to have buried. Behind them, the mountain listens.
Michael.
In the dog's collar, something old begins to wake. And when Atlas steps into the storm, this Christmas night will turn from coincidence to reckoning, from memory to truth, from loss to a rescue no one planned. What happens next will make you believe that some miracles arrive quietly, on four paws, with loyalty instead of thunder. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. And if you believe no one, human or animal, should ever face the cold alone, subscribe now, and share this story with someone who needs hope tonight. Christmas night settled over the mountains like a prayer that had gone unanswered. The snow did not celebrate. It did not sparkle or sing. It fell quietly, like ash after a long-forgotten fire. Snow that swallowed sound. Snow that made the world feel smaller than it truly was. On a narrow mountain road that maps pretended did not exist, Jack Mercer drove alone. Jack had once been a Navy SEAL, not the kind of man who said it out loud. War had taught him that the most important truths preferred silence. At 41, he carried himself like someone who had once moved very fast to survive, and now measured every step as if it were borrowed time. His shoulders were broad, his posture straight, but the way his hands gripped the steering wheel betrayed a quiet distrust of the road ahead. The old pickup growled as it climbed the pass, headlights cutting a thin yellow tunnel through the storm, like a blade trying to split the dark. The dark did not yield. In the passenger seat, Atlas sat motionless. The retired canine did not sleep. He had not truly slept since the war ended. Atlas was large, powerful, his chest wide and his frame lean with a strength that had learned discipline the hard way. His sable coat caught the light in shifting shades of shadow and silver, like memories layered over memories. Around his neck hung an old leather collar, cracked with age and stained with time. It no longer belonged to any mission, yet Atlas wore it the way soldiers wore their uniforms long after the fighting stopped. Jack hadn't planned to drive tonight. Christmas Eve was usually spent inside his workshop, tearing engines apart until exhaustion arrived before memory could. But the silence in his house had been heavier than the snowfall outside, and Atlas had stood by the door, calm and unmoving, with the look of a soldier who had just received orders no one else could hear. That should have been warning enough. The wind howled through the pass, carrying the sharp scent of fresh snow and a cold that didn't stop at skin. It went looking for old wounds. Jack exhaled, fog blooming against the windshield. Then Atlas moved, not the movement of curiosity, the movement of instinct. His ears snapped forward, his body stiffened. A low sound rolled in his chest, not a growl, not a bark, something between a warning and a prayer. Jack eased off the accelerator. "What is it, buddy?" he murmured, as if speaking too loudly might fracture the night. Atlas didn't answer with sound. He answered by standing up, all four paws planted hard against the floor. His body blocked the truck's forward motion with a certainty that allowed no argument. His teeth flashed, not in threat, but in urgency. His amber eyes locked onto Jack with a look Jack had seen only once before, on a battlefield far from home, just before everything went wrong. Jack's pulse spiked. "Atlas," he whispered. "Easy." The dog shook sharply, as if trying to tear something invisible from his own skin. Then he barked, short, raw, afraid. Jack slammed the brakes. The truck skidded slightly before stopping at an awkward angle across the narrow road. The silence that followed was immense. Even the snow seemed to pause. Jack opened the door. Cold rushed in like breath from another world. Atlas leapt out before Jack could say his name, disappearing into the white storm, his dark shape swallowed by falling snow. "Atlas!" Jack shouted, his voice shredded by the wind. He followed, boots sinking deep with every step, pain flaring in his left knee where the war had left its quiet reminder. The mountain did not care. Then Jack heard it. Not Atlas. Something thinner, weaker, barely there. A cough. Jack froze. His heart tightened in his chest. In that moment, he understood something he had tried very hard to forget. This Christmas night hadn't brought him here to hide. It had brought him here to be found. Somewhere ahead, beyond the curtain of snow and darkness, a life was waiting. Not for a miracle, but for the loyalty of a dog who had never forgotten his oath. And Atlas, faithful as the turning of the earth, was already leading the way. Atlas moved through the storm as if the mountain itself had stepped aside for him. His paws barely broke the surface of the snow, not because the snow was shallow, but because he knew where to place his weight. Jack followed as best he could. Each step sank deep, pulling at his legs like the mountain wanted payment for passage. Cold burned his lungs. Pain flared in his left knee, a souvenir from a war that had never fully let him go. "Atlas!" he shouted again. The wind took the name and shredded it into nothing. Then Jack saw it. A shape that didn't belong, dark, still, wrong. An SUV sat crooked at the edge of the trees, half swallowed by falling snow. Its front end nosed into a stand of pines like an apology made too late. One rear tire spun uselessly in the air, turning slowly, stubbornly, as if the vehicle still believed escape was possible. A faint yellow glow flickered inside, not steady, not strong, but alive enough to matter. Atlas was already there. He threw himself against the driver's side door, barking sharp and frantic, his claws scraping metal with a sound that cut through the storm. Jack reached the vehicle moments later, heart pounding hard enough to feel dangerous. "Jesus," he breathed. He wiped frost from the window with his sleeve and looked inside. The woman in the driver's seat looked like winter had already claimed her. She was slumped forward, forehead resting against the steering wheel, hair loose and dark against pale skin gone faintly blue. Her coat was too thin for the mountain. Her hands were bare. Her eyelashes glittered with frost. Her chest moved, but barely. "Ma'am," Jack said, his voice steady by training alone. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered once, nothing more. Atlas howled, not the sound of fear, not the sound of panic, the sound of refusal. Jack tried the door handle, locked. He slammed his shoulder into the door once. Nothing. Again. The glass held, stubborn as the cold. "She's hypothermic," Jack muttered, scanning fast. "Engine's dead. Heater froze." Atlas barked again. One short, sharp sound. Commanding. Jack didn't argue with it. He ran back toward the road, fingers numb as he fumbled for the emergency hammer. When he swung, he didn't hold back. The glass shattered inward with a violent crack. Cold exploded into the cab, sharp and alive, rushing out like it had been waiting. Jack reached through the broken frame, slicing his sleeve on jagged edges, unlocked the door, and wrenched it open. The woman sagged toward him. He caught her instinctively, pulling her free of the seatbelt, lifting her into his arms. She weighed nothing. She weighed everything. Her body radiated an unnatural cold, the kind that burned even through gloves. "It's okay," Jack whispered automatically, rocking her once, gently. "I've got you. You're not alone." Atlas stood inches away, trembling, his amber eyes locked on her face as if memorizing it. Jack turned back toward the road. That was when her lips moved, just barely. A single word escaped her mouth, thin as breath on glass. "Mason." Jack stopped. The mountain seemed to inhale. Atlas froze, mid-breath, mid-blink. The name hung between them like a gunshot that never faded. Mason, Jack's best friend, his brother in everything but blood, a Navy SEAL, the man who had trusted Atlas with his life. Dead, according to every report Jack had been handed. Jack swallowed hard. His arms tightened around the woman as if letting go would shatter her. He forced his legs to move. Step by step, he carried her back toward the truck, snow soaking into his clothes, the storm pressing close like a witness. Atlas flanked them, never looking away from her face, his body a dark, unyielding shadow. Inside the cab, Jack laid her carefully across the seat and wrapped her in blankets. He cranked the heat until the engine protested. Warm air screamed from the vents, too late, but trying anyway. Atlas climbed into the back seat and sat directly behind her. He lowered his muzzle gently to the crown of her head and breathed, slow, steady, as if lending her his own rhythm. Jack gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The road ahead blurred through falling snow. "Buddy," he whispered, voice barely holding, "tell me what you know." Atlas met his eyes in the rearview mirror. He did not look away. As the truck began its slow descent down the mountain, Jack understood something deep and certain. This rescue was not an accident. It was a summons. And whatever waited at the end of this road had been waiting a very long time to be found. The truck moved slowly down the mountain. Snow whispered beneath the tires, no longer shouting, just watching. Inside the cab, the heater roared, pushing warm air into a space that had almost forgotten what warmth felt like. Jack kept both hands on the wheel. One eye stayed on the road. The other drifted again and again to the rearview mirror. Atlas sat in the back seat, his body curved protectively around the woman's head, his breathing steady and deliberate, not resting, guarding. The woman shivered, then shivered less. Color had not yet returned to her face, but death had stepped back. Just enough. Jack pulled the truck to the shoulder. He reached behind the seat, wrapped another blanket around her shoulders, and checked her pulse the way he had once checked men who might not make it to morning. "Stay with me," he said quietly, not a command, a request. Her eyelids fluttered open, gray-green eyes, unfocused at first, then slowly finding the world again. "Where am I?" she whispered. "You're safe," Jack said. "Warm now, just breathe." Her gaze drifted past him, to Atlas. Something changed in her expression. Not fear, not surprise, recognition without memory. Her fingers twitched beneath the blanket, reaching, then stopping halfway. She murmured. "That's Atlas," Jack said gently. "He's with me." At the sound of his name, Atlas lifted his head. His ears relaxed slightly. His tail moved once. Slow, careful, deliberate. The woman swallowed. "He stayed," she whispered. Jack nodded. "He always does." Silence returned, not empty, listening. The road stretched ahead, white and narrow, like it didn't want to be trusted. Jack swallowed. "You said a name," he said at last. "Mason." The woman closed her eyes. Her breath caught, not from cold, but from something sharper. "My brother," she said. "My older brother." The words landed softly. They did not feel soft. Jack's chest tightened. "What's his last name?" he asked. She hesitated, as if saying it might make it real. "Quinn," she whispered. "Mason Quinn." Atlas stiffened. His head snapped up. A low sound vibrated deep in his chest. Not a growl. Recognition. Jack eased the truck to a stop. The engine idled, patient. "Mason Quinn," Jack said slowly. "I served with him." Her eyes opened wide now. "You knew him?" Jack stared out at the road. "I was there," he said. "On the night they said he died." The woman's breath hitched. "They told us it was enemy fire," she said. No remains, no answers, just silence. Atlas shifted, placing his head against Jack's seat. The dog exhaled through his nose, a sound that said no. Jack nodded once. "That's not how it happened," he said. "That's just how it was written." Her hands tightened in the blanket. "You're saying he didn't die?" she asked. Jack shook his head. "I'm saying the story they told you was missing." Too much. Snow drifted past the windshield, slow and quiet, like time trying to be gentle. The first lights of town appeared ahead, small, yellow, uncertain. White pine, a place where roads ended and people stopped running. Jack drove the rest of the way in silence. At the workshop, he cut the engine and stepped into the cold. Atlas jumped out first, then waited, watching Jack lift the woman carefully into his arms. Inside, the air smelled of oil and old wood. Jack laid her down on the couch near the stove and fed the fire until it answered. Warmth crept back, inch by inch. Atlas lay beside her, his body pressed against hers, one amber eye open, always watching. The woman's breathing steadied. Jack stood there, hands hanging uselessly at his sides. Mason's name moved through the room, not as a ghost, as a question that had waited years for the right night to be asked, and Jack understood with a clarity that hurt. The past had not followed him here. It had been waiting. The fire did not rush. It never did. It caught slowly, like warmth needed proof that it was allowed to stay. Jack knelt beside the stove, feeding it one split log at a time, listening to the iron belly hum as heat began to wake the room. The workshop smelled of oil, old wood, and snow melting from coats left too close to hope. Behind him, the woman slept. Her name, he would learn it soon, rested unspoken in the air. For now, she was simply alive. Wrapped in blankets on the narrow couch, her breath came shallow but steady, like a fragile truce with the night. Atlas lay pressed against her side, not curled, positioned. His large body formed a barrier between her and the rest of the room, chest rising and falling in careful rhythm. One amber eye remained open, tracking Jack's every movement with the calm authority of a sentry who had survived too many nights to trust peace too quickly. Jack poured hot water into a chipped mug, tore open a packet of cocoa he kept for stranded travelers, and stirred until steam bloomed upward. Sweet, bitter, human. He brought it to the couch and paused. Atlas lifted his head slightly. Jack waited. Only when the dog lowered his muzzle again did Jack kneel and brush the woman's lips with warmth. "Slow," he whispered. "Just a little." Her mouth trembled. She swallowed. Color edged faintly back into her cheeks, like memory finding its way home. Jack exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. The workshop creaked softly as the wind leaned against it. Outside, the mountain listened with the patience of something ancient that had seen many small miracles and never rushed any of them. Jack wrapped electrical tape around a cut on his forearm without looking. Muscle memory did the work. Pain, he had learned, could wait. The woman stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened. This time, she stayed. Gray-green eyes focused slowly, taking in the low ceiling, the shadows, the firelight dancing across steel tools hung like quiet witnesses on the wall. She swallowed. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice thin but present. "You're in White Pine," Jack said softly. "My workshop. You're safe." Her gaze shifted to Atlas. He did not move, not even when her fingers brushed his fur. Something loosened in her expression, relief without explanation. "He stayed," she murmured. Jack nodded. "He always does." She closed her eyes again, not from exhaustion this time, but permission. A knock came at the door. Jack stiffened. Atlas's ear flicked, but he did not rise. Jack crossed the room and opened the door to a woman bundled in wool and purpose. She carried herself like someone who had learned how to walk into bad nights without asking permission. "May," Jack said quietly. She stepped inside, already scanning, already knowing. "Hypothermia?" she asked. "Yes." May knelt by the couch, checked the woman's pulse, listened to her breathing, adjusted the blankets with Hans. That did not shake. "She'll live," May said at last. The words did not echo. They settled. Jack closed his eyes. May looked at Atlas. "He's working," she observed. Jack smiled faintly. He never stopped. May gave him a long look, the kind people gave when they recognize grief by smell. "I'll check back in an hour," she said. "Keep her warm. Don't rush her." Jack nodded. When May left, the room grew quiet again, not empty, held. Jack sat on the floor between the couch and the door, back against the old tool bench, knees pulled close. He stared at the fire until it blurred. Atlas shifted once, adjusting his weight to better cover the woman's side. When her breath hitched, his ear flicked. When her hand twitched in sleep, his tail tightened its curl. Guarding. Jack watched them, and felt something unfamiliar press against his ribs. Not fear, responsibility. He had carried men out of firefights. He had watched lives slip through fingers trained to hold on. But this felt different, because this time, the past was in the room with him, and it was breathing. Outside, the snow continued to fall, quiet and persistent, sealing the night away from the rest of the world. Inside the workshop, the fire burned steady. And for the first time in years, Jack did not feel the need to run from the silence, because the silence, for once, was not alone. The night did not leave. It only leaned closer. The fire burned low and steady, its light stretching long shadows across the workshop floor. Tools hung in silence, rows of metal that had learned how to listen without interrupting. Jack sat with his back against the workbench, eyes half closed. He thought he might have slept. He hadn't. Atlas lifted his head, not suddenly, not alarmed, purposefully. Jack felt it before he saw it, that subtle shift in the room, the way air changes when something old decides it is done waiting. Atlas stood. He did not go to the door. He did not look at the woman sleeping on the couch. Instead, he walked to the far wall, slowly, deliberately. Jack watched as the dog stopped in front of a tall, dented metal locker. The paint was chipped, the handle dulled by years of dust. It hadn't been opened since Jack stopped pretending he would ever need what was inside. Atlas sat. Then he lifted one paw and placed it against the locker door. Not scratching, pressing. Jack's throat tightened. "That hasn't been opened in years," he murmured. Atlas did not move. Jack rose slowly, joints stiff, heart heavier than it had been minutes ago. He crossed the room and stood before the locker, like a man approaching a grave he had promised never to visit again. Behind him, the woman stirred. She pushed herself up on one elbow, wincing but awake now, her eyes following Atlas. "What is he doing?" she asked softly. Jack did not answer. He reached for the handle. The metal protested as it opened, the hinge crying out like something offended to be remembered. Inside, folded uniforms, boots with desert dust still caught in the seams, a field jacket that smelled faintly of oil and heat, and places Jack had sworn never to revisit. And at the bottom, an envelope, thick, sealed, yellowed at the edges, a name written across the front in ink that had faded but not forgotten: Mason Quinn. The woman's breath caught. Her hand flew to her mouth. "That's," she whispered. "My brother," Jack said quietly. Atlas rose and stepped closer, pressing his head gently against Jack's thigh, anchoring him. Jack lifted the envelope. For a moment he did not open it. He remembered the night it had been given to him. A handoff in a shipping container. A look that said, "Don't ask." He had obeyed. He opened it now. Inside were photographs first. 2 men in desert light, younger, unbroken. One of them was Jack, the other, Mason, grinning like the world hadn't learned how to disappoint him yet. Below the photos, documents, stamped, filed, then crossed out. Lines of black ink erased names, dates shifted, orders rerouted. Jack's eyes tracked the words slowly, the way bomb techs learned to read, carefully, knowing one mistake could cost lives. "This wasn't combat," he said, voice tight. "This was paperwork." The woman pushed herself upright, blankets falling around her shoulders. "What does it say?" she asked. Jack swallowed. "It says your brother didn't die because of the enemy," he said. "He died because someone decided the truth was inconvenient." Atlas let out a low sound, not anger, confirmation. The woman stared at the papers, her face pale but fierce. "They told us he was a hero," she said. "They told us to be proud." Jack nodded. "He was a hero," he said. "That part wasn't the lie." Silence spread through the room, thin as ice across a creek. Atlas nudged the locker once more, then stepped back, his task complete. Jack folded the documents carefully and slid them back into the envelope, not hiding them, but acknowledging that they had weight. "What do they want from you?" the woman asked. Jack met her eyes. "Not me," he said. Her gaze shifted slowly to Atlas. Understanding landed, not all at once, but enough. "They want him," she whispered. Outside, the wind shifted. The fire cracked. Atlas returned to the space beside the couch and lay down again, placing his body between the woman and the room, as if drawing a line that could not be crossed. Jack watched him and felt a cold truth settle into place. Atlas had not led him up the mountain to save a stranger. He had led him there to finish a story, and stories, especially the ones buried by men who feared them, did not stay buried for long. Morning did not arrive with relief. It arrived cautiously, as if the light itself was unsure it was welcome. Snow still fell, thinner now, softer, covering the mountain in a clean lie that pretended nothing had happened the night before. Inside the workshop, the fire burned low. Jack stood at the sink, staring at nothing, hands resting on the edge like they needed something solid to believe in. Behind him, the woman, Elena, sat wrapped in blankets, awake now, quiet, her eyes sharper than her body. Atlas lay between them, not sleeping, listening. A knock came at the door. Jack stiffened. Atlas did not rise. He did something worse. He watched. Jack wiped his hands and crossed the room, opening the door to a man who looked like he belonged anywhere but here. City boots, clean coat, an honest smile worn too carefully. "Morning," the man said, voice warm, polite. "Roads are rough out there." Jack nodded. "They usually are." The man's eyes moved, just once, past Jack's shoulder, into the workshop. They stopped on Atlas. Something flickered there. Interest. "I heard you found a dog," the man said lightly. "Big shepherd, old scars." Atlas's ears tilted back a fraction. Jack felt the shift like pressure in his chest. "He's mine," Jack said. The man smiled wider. "Of course, still, dogs like that don't just wander. Military training, right? K9? Jack did not answer. Silence stretched. The man cleared his throat. "If you ever consider selling, there are people who would pay well. Very well." Atlas stood, not aggressively, decisively. He stepped closer to Jack, placing his body against Jack's leg like a warning dressed as loyalty. The man raised his hands, laughing softly. No offense meant, just asking. Jack met his eyes. Don't, he said. The man nodded, backing away. Fair enough. He left footprints in the snow that looked too neat. The door closed. Atlas did not sit back down. He wasn't here for you, Elena said quietly. Jack shook his head. No. That night, the workshop felt smaller. The wind tested the walls. The fire hissed. Jack checked the locks twice, then once more without remembering why. Atlas lay stretched across the threshold, a dark line between warmth and whatever waited outside. Elena sat at the small table, fingers wrapped around a mug she had forgotten to drink from. He's coming back, she said. Jack didn't argue. It happened just after midnight. The sound was not loud. It was careful. The back door handle turned once, slow, deliberate. Atlas stood. Jack moved at the same time, reaching beneath the counter for a weapon that no longer officially existed. He cut the lights. Darkness swallowed the room. The smell came next. Sweet. Wrong. Jack knew it instantly. Cover your mouth, he whispered. Elena barely had time to raise her sleeve. A thin white vapor slid beneath the door, hugging the floor, moving with intention. It did not rush. Searched. Atlas took one step forward. No, Jack breathed. The dog did not listen. Atlas moved into the room, placing himself between the creeping fog and the people behind him. His chest expanded once, twice. The door burst open. A figure moved through the haze, tall and precise, gloves already on. He did not speak. He did not hurry. The syringe flashed once. Atlas lunged. The needle sank into his flank with practiced ease. Atlas staggered. Jack roared his name and charged, firing blind into the fog. The shot disappeared into white. The man was already moving. Atlas collapsed halfway across the floor. The man grabbed the collar and dragged him backward toward the door. No! Jack shouted, slamming into the figure, but the fog hit him hard, heavy and fast. His vision tunneled. His legs faltered. Elena screamed. The back door slammed. Cold rushed in. The vapor thinned as quickly as it had come, leaving the room hollow and ringing. Jack hit the door and burst outside into the snow. Elena ran after him, barefoot, breath tearing from her throat. Atlas! She cried. The trail was there for only a moment. A dark line dragged through white boot prints too clean to belong. Jack followed it into the trees. His leg burned, his chest hollowed. 20 yards in, the trail vanished. Snow erased everything. Jack fell to his knees. Behind him, Elena gasped, then her voice cut off. Jack turned. Too late. A shape moved behind her. A hand clamped over her mouth. She disappeared into the trees with a sound like fabric tearing and prayers breaking. Elena! Jack screamed. The mountain did not answer. The night closed in, and for the first time since war, Jack learned what helplessness truly meant. Not in an open field, but in a warm room that had promised safety and failed. The night did not move on. It stayed, heavy and close, like it was waiting for something to break. Jack stood in the snow where the trail had vanished, breath tearing from his chest in clouds that looked like they might carry his voice somewhere useful. They did not. The trees offered no answers. The mountain kept its silence. Atlas was gone. Elena was gone. The workshop behind him glowed faintly through the falling snow. Warm, useless light. Safety that had arrived too early and left too soon. Jack staggered back inside. The door shut with a sound that felt final. The room looked wrong without Atlas. Too open, too unguarded. Jack bent over, hands on his knees, forcing air into lungs that refused to believe this was happening. He tasted metal and cold and something bitter he couldn't name. Then he saw it. The collar. It lay near the back door, snapped clean in two, leather torn, metal ring bent as if it had been twisted by force and urgency. Jack knelt and lifted it carefully, the way men lifted things they were afraid to admit were already gone. He turned it over in his hands. Once, twice. His thumb brushed a seam he hadn't felt in years. A memory surfaced, sharp and uninvited. A shipping container. Heat shimmering off steel, Mason smiling like he knew something Jack didn't. Just in case, Mason had said, pressing 2 fingers into the leather. Jack had never asked. In case of what? His breath caught. He pressed. There was a faint click, so soft it might have been imagined. Then, a blue light blinked alive in his palm. Once, gone. Then again, steady. Jack stared at it, afraid to breathe. "You stubborn son of a," he whispered, voice breaking around the words. The GPS had not died. It had been sleeping. Jack grabbed his jacket and ran. Snow lashed his face as he burst outside, nearly colliding with headlights swinging into the yard. A truck skidded to a stop. Another followed, then another. Men stepped out, faces carved by wind and long nights. Ropes over shoulders, lamps in hand. Mountain rescue. Douglas stood at the front, hat pulled low, eyes already reading the ground like a language he had never forgotten. "Talk to me," Douglas said. Jack held out the collar. "It's active," he said. "He's alive." Douglas leaned in, disbelief fighting hope. The blue light blinked again. Douglas exhaled. "Then we move." They moved fast, but not careless. The mountain demanded respect. Jack led, the collar held out like a compass that beat in time with his heart. The signal pulsed faintly at first, then steadier, threading through trees and snow like a whisper that refused to be lost. They followed drag marks until the wind erased them. They followed instinct when footprints vanished. They followed silence when sound lied. An hour passed, then another. Cold deepened. Snow thickened. The mountain pressed back. The signal stuttered. Jack stopped. His chest tightened. "Don't you dare," he whispered. The light blinked again, stronger, closer. Douglas's voice dropped. "He's still moving." Relief crashed through Jack hard enough to make his knees weak. Then the collar shifted in his hand. The signal swung, not forward, behind him. Jack spun, dizzy with meaning. A sound cut through the trees, thin, ragged, a bark. "Elena," Jack breathed. "Atlas." The sound came again, angrier now, hoarse, like it hurt to make. It came from below. The slope fell away sharply, teeth of rock and ice hidden beneath snow. Jack didn't wait for permission. He slid, fell, caught himself on branches that tore at his gloves and skin. Pain flared in his leg. He ignored it. They scrambled down together, lamps slicing through dark. And then they saw it. A cabin, low, crooked, ashamed to exist. A single window glowed faintly. A generator coughed somewhere behind it. Atlas's bark tore free again, furious now, alive. Jack laughed once, a broken sound that surprised him. "He's there," he said. "He's right there." Douglas signaled the team into position. Jack stood shaking, the collar's light steady in his hand. For the first time since the night began, hope did not feel like a lie. It felt like a direction. And the mountain, having taken enough, finally showed him where to go. The cabin did not look like a place meant for living. It leaned into the hillside as if ashamed it had ever been built. Roof bowed under the weight of snow and secrets. One window glowed weakly, a tired square of yellow light that felt more like a confession than shelter. The generator coughed somewhere behind it, an uneven sound, like a heart that didn't trust itself. Jack stood at the edge of the trees, breath shallow, the broken collar warm in his hand. The blue light blinked steadily now, no longer hiding, alive. Douglas raised a hand. The rescue team spread out, quiet and precise, boots finding ground that refused to offer it. Lamps stayed low. No one spoke. The mountain listened closely tonight. Then Jack heard it, a sound that cut through everything else. Atlas, not a bark, a growl, ragged, furious, unmistakably alive. Jack moved before permission arrived. Inside the cabin, the air was wrong. Fuel, cold metal, fear. A bare bulb swung overhead, throwing shadows that moved when nothing else did. Maps were pinned to the walls, lines and markings layered over each other like lies that had practiced being neat. Atlas lay on his side near a scarred wooden table. His chest rose, fell. His eyes snapped open the moment Jack crossed the threshold. Bright, burning, furious suns. "Hey," Jack whispered, dropping to his knees beside him. "I'm here. I've got you." Atlas tried to stand. He couldn't. Jack pressed his forehead into the dog's fur, breathing him in, snow, iron, loyalty, and felt something in his chest loosen for the first time in hours. Behind them, a shape moved. The man stepped out of the shadows like he had been waiting to be acknowledged. Tall, lean, immaculate. His face bore marks now, blood at the corner of his mouth, swelling along the jaw, but his eyes were calm in a way that meant he believed he still had time. "This didn't have to be messy," the man said, voice almost kind. "The dog belongs to history." Jack rose slowly. "He belongs to us," Jack said. The man smiled faintly. "Exactly." He lunged. The moment fractured. Elena's voice cut through the cabin. "Jack!" She stepped forward from the corner where she had been bound, moving on instinct rather than strength. The man's elbow caught her temple with brutal precision. She went down. Jack roared. What followed was not a fight. It was collision. Jack moved like something the war had taught wrong, fast, brutal, unwilling to stop. The man countered with training of his own, each movement economical, empty of hesitation. Douglas's voice cracked through the chaos. "Down! Now!" A taser sang. Blue lightning wrapped the man in sudden truth. He collapsed, shaking, the lie finally leaving his body. Jack did not watch him fall. He was already kneeling beside Elena, cradling her head, whispering her name like it might anchor her to the world. "Stay with me," he begged. "Please." Her breath was there, thin, angry, real. Atlas dragged himself closer, whining, his body shaking with effort that cost him everything. He pressed his head against Elena's leg, then turned and licked Jack's hand once. A single lick. Enough. Sirens rose outside, mountain rescue answering the night with light and motion and voices that knew what to do. The cabin filled with sound and purpose. Douglas knelt beside Jack, pressing his coat around Elena's head, hands steady despite the cold and the cost. "You did it," he said. The words sounded too small. They were not. Medics rushed in. Orders were given. The man was cuffed, dragged away, his calm finally gone. Jack stayed on the floor, one hand on Elena, one on Atlas, as if letting go might break the spell that had kept them breathing. Lights flooded the cabin. Snow fell outside, indifferent. And for the first time since the mountain had closed its fist around him, Jack felt something like release. Not victory, survival, hard won, shared, alive. Morning did not arrive all at once. It came carefully, as if the world itself was afraid to disturb what had survived the night. Snow still clung to the mountains, but it had softened, losing its edge. Light slipped through clouds in thin silver threads, touching rooftops, trees, and the narrow roads of white pine like a quiet apology. At the clinic, time slowed. Machines hummed, footsteps whispered, breath was counted in patience. Jack sat on the floor beside Atlas. He didn't remember choosing the spot, only that when his legs finally gave up, this was where he ended. Atlas lay stretched out on a blanket, bandaged, shaved in places that told stories Jack didn't want to imagine. His chest rose and fell, steady now, stubborn, familiar, alive. Jack rested one hand against the dog's side, feeling the warmth there, real and undeniable. He had learned in war not to trust relief, but this felt earned. Across the room, Elena slept beneath white sheets, a thin line of bruising along her temple, an IV dripping time back into her veins. Her hand lay open at her side, fingers relaxed in a way they hadn't been when Jack first found her in the snow. She was breathing. The nurse, May, moved quietly between them, checking numbers, adjusting blankets, saying very little. Some nights did not need words. They only needed witnesses. Hours passed like that. No announcements, no miracles shouted from rooftops. Just the long work of staying. Jack didn't pray. He never had, not in the way people expected. But he stayed, and Atlas stayed, and Elena stayed. That was enough. When Atlas finally stirred, it was not dramatic. No sudden awakening, just a deeper breath. Then another. Then his eyes opened. Jack felt it before he saw it. The shift in weight, the awareness returning like someone turning on a light in a room they already knew. "Hey," Jack whispered. Atlas looked at him, not confused, not afraid, present. His tail moved once. Jack laughed. The sound startled him, rough, broken, real. It turned into something wet and quiet that pressed out of his chest before he could stop it. He bowed his head against Atlas's neck and stayed there until the shaking passed. Outside, the mountain exhaled. Spring did not arrive the way postcards promised. It did not come in color. It came in sound. Snow loosening its grip, water learning how to move again, the river remembering it had somewhere to go. White pine breathed carefully, like a body testing old scars. Elena chose to stay. She did not announce it. She simply stopped talking about leaving. When she was strong enough, she found a narrow storefront near Jack's workshop. Sun-washed, stubborn, empty in the way rooms sometimes were when they were waiting for the right hands. She learned the oven the way some people learned prayers. Slowly, respectfully. She named the place No One Alone on Christmas. People smiled at the length of it. Then they came inside. Jack rebuilt the workshop with patience he hadn't known he possessed. He replaced beams that had gone soft with age, sanded down mistakes, hung a sign that didn't promise miracles, just honesty. Atlas took up his old position, between doors, not guarding against war anymore, guarding against loneliness. They spoke Mason's name often, not with fear, not with anger, but with the quiet accuracy of people who had finally been allowed to tell the truth. He had lived. He had mattered. He had been loved by a dog who refused to forget him. Some evenings, Jack and Elena sat on overturned buckets outside the workshop, coffee cooling in their hands, watching Atlas survey the night like it was a responsibility he had accepted willingly. They did not rush love. They let it arrive the way the mountain did, when it was ready. Because happiness, Jack learned, was not loud. It was the sound of a shop closing, a woman not leaving, a dog choosing to lie down at your feet and stay. Miracles did not come with thunder. They came quietly, on four paws, with loyalty in their chest, and a heart that refused to leave. And sometimes, that was enough to save a life. Some miracles don't arrive with thunder. They don't tear the sky open or announce themselves with light. They arrive quietly. Sometimes, a miracle looks like a loyal dog standing between fear and the ones he loves. Sometimes, it looks like a stranger showing up exactly when hope feels thin. And sometimes, it is simply a second chance to breathe again, to stay, to be found. God does not always answer our prayers in the way we expect, but He always answers them in the way we need most. If you are tired tonight, God sees you. If you are lonely, God knows where you are. And if you feel lost or forgotten, remember this: God often sends hope down roads that never appear on any map. In our everyday lives, we may never perform great miracles, but a kind word, a moment of patience, or a quiet act of loyalty may be exactly how God chooses to work through us. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe that no person and no animal should ever face fear alone, please subscribe to our channel for more stories of love, healing, and second chances. May God bless you and your family. May He bring peace to your home, strength to your difficult days, and comfort to your heart. You are not forgotten, you are seen, and you are deeply loved. Amen.